Human baby found a mother bear, chained on her legs. What he did put everyone in tears. Let us know where you're watching from. If you love my content, consider supporting it with a super thanks. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe. It'll help us to remain in touch with amazing people like you. The morning mist hung low over Pine Hollow, a small village nestled between rolling hills and ancient forests. Sunlight filtered through the tall trees, casting dappled shadows on the ground below. In a modest cabin at the edge of the woods lived the Bennett family, Noah and Sophia Bennett, along with their 15-month-old son, Oliver. The cabin's wooden walls held the warmth of many memories, and the porch swing creaked gently in the morning breeze. Oliver was an unusually curious child, with bright blue eyes that seemed to take in everything around him. He had just learned to walk, his tiny legs wobbling with each determined step. His laughter echoed through the cabin as he explored every corner, touching everything within his reach. Sophia often joked that Oliver had been born with an adventurer's soul, never afraid of the unknown. That particular morning started like any other. Sophia prepared breakfast while Noah gathered firewood outside. Oliver sat on the kitchen floor, playing with wooden blocks, occasionally looking up at his mother with a wide, toothless grin. The radio hummed softly in the background, reporting news about recent animal sightings in the area. Bears have been spotted closer to the village than usual, the radio announcer warned. Residents are advised to stay vigilant and keep children supervised at all times. Sophia glanced at Oliver, who was now attempting to stack his blocks into a wobbly tower. "Don't worry, little explorer," she whispered. "We'll keep you safe." What Sophia didn't know was that deep in the forest, something terrible had happened overnight. A mother bear and her cub had wandered too close to illegal trapping grounds. The poachers, working under the cover of darkness, had set cruel metal traps throughout the area. The mother bear, in her desperate attempt to protect her cub, had stepped into one of these traps. The metal teeth had clamped around her legs, the chains securing her to a nearby tree. Her pained growls echoed through the forest, but no one was there to help. Back at the cabin, Noah returned with an armful of firewood. His expression was troubled as he set the wood down by the fireplace. "I heard strange noises in the forest," he said, wiping his hands on his jeans. "Sounded like an animal in pain." Sophia frowned, picking up Oliver and balancing him on her hip. "Do you think it's one of the bears the radio mentioned?" Noah shrugged. "Could be. I'm going to check with the other villagers. Maybe someone knows something." As Noah left the cabin, Sophia placed Oliver in his playpen on the porch, where she could watch him while hanging laundry. The morning air was crisp, filled with the scent of pine and wildflowers. Oliver stood holding onto the edge of the playpen, his gaze fixed on the forest edge where a butterfly danced among the wildflowers. In the village center, a small crowd had gathered. Martha Wilson, the village elder, stood in the middle, her face etched with concern. "Poachers," she spat. "They've been setting traps in our forest again. Carson spotted one this morning while checking his hunting lines." Noah joined the group, listening as Carson described what he had seen. "There's a bear caught in one of the traps," Carson explained. "A big female with a cub nearby. She's chained by her legs, can't move more than a few feet in any direction. The poor thing is suffering." "We should call animal control," someone suggested. "The nearest station is hours away," Martha replied. "By the time they get here, that bear could be dead from stress or injury." "We can't just leave her there," Noah argued. "What about her cub?" The villagers looked at each other uneasily. Bears were dangerous, especially mothers protecting their young. No one was eager to approach a wounded, frightened animal capable of tearing a person apart with one swipe of her powerful paws. Back at the Bennett cabin, Sophia had stepped inside to answer a phone call from her sister. Oliver, momentarily unattended, spotted a gap in the playpen where a board had come loose. With a determination only a toddler could muster, he pushed against the board until it gave way enough for his small body to squeeze through. Freedom achieved, Oliver took wobbly steps across the porch and down the 3 shallow steps to the ground below. The butterfly that had caught his attention earlier fluttered just beyond his reach, leading him toward the forest edge. Oliver followed, his tiny hands reaching up to catch the beautiful creature, unaware of the danger that lay ahead or the frantic search that would soon begin when his mother returned to find the playpen empty. Deep in the forest, the wounded mother bear had grown weaker. Her cub circled anxiously around her, occasionally nudging her with its nose as if asking her to get up and move. The bear's once glossy coat was now matted with dirt and blood where the metal teeth had pierced her flesh. Her eyes, usually alert and fierce, were dulled with pain. Still, when she heard the snapping of twigs nearby, her head rose, and a low, warning growl rumbled in her throat. Oliver, having followed the butterfly deep into the forest, stopped at the sound. The butterfly forgotten, he tilted his head curiously at the strange noise. Another few steps brought him into a small clearing, and there he saw the mother bear, chains wrapped around her legs, binding her to a tree. The metal trap's teeth were buried deep in her flesh, causing blood to seep onto the forest floor. Any adult would have run in terror at the sight of the wounded predator. But Oliver, too young to understand danger, only saw suffering. The bear's eyes met his, and in that moment something inexplicable passed between them. A recognition, perhaps, that transcended the boundaries of species. The mother bear's growl softened, and she watched with wary curiosity as the human child took another step forward. The forest grew quiet, as if nature itself held its breath. The mother bear's cub cowered behind a fallen log, its small black eyes fixed on the human baby who dared approach its trapped mother. Oliver's chubby legs carried him closer, each step crunching on the forest floor. The sunlight filtering through the canopy cast a golden glow on the clearing, illuminating the terrible scene in an almost ethereal light. Sophia, having returned to the porch and discovered the broken playpen board, felt her heart stop. "Oliver!" she screamed, her voice echoing through the trees. She ran into the cabin, nearly colliding with Noah, who had just returned from the village meeting. "He's gone," she gasped, tears already streaming down her face. "The playpen, he got out somehow." Noah's face drained of color. "The bear," he whispered, remembering the conversation in the village. Without another word, he grabbed his rifle from above the fireplace and rushed outside, Sophia close behind him. "Get everyone from the village," Noah instructed as they ran toward the forest edge. "Tell them to bring flashlights and ropes and call Doctor Reynolds. We might need her veterinary skills." Sophia nodded, her whole body trembling as she sprinted toward the village, screaming for help. Within minutes, a search party formed, the villagers armed with tools, weapons, and fear for the missing child. Meanwhile, in the clearing, Oliver stood just feet away from the injured bear. The massive creature could have easily swiped at him with her powerful claws, despite her chains. Instead, she remained still, her breathing labored, her eyes never leaving the small human before her. Oliver, driven by innocent compassion, extended his tiny hand toward the bear's nose. "No, no," he babbled, the simple words the only ones he knew to express distress. Tears welled in his eyes as he looked at the cruel metal biting into the bear's flesh. The cub, growing bolder, emerged from its hiding place. It approached Oliver cautiously, its nose twitching as it caught the unfamiliar scent. The mother bear made a soft huffing sound, as if warning her cub to be careful. but there was no aggression in her demeanor, only exhaustion and a strange resignation. Oliver turned at the sound of the approaching cub. His face lit up with delight, and he clapped his hands excitedly. "Doggy!" he exclaimed, mistaking the bear cub for a puppy in his limited understanding of the world. The cub, curious rather than frightened, came closer. It was young, perhaps only a few months old, with fuzzy black fur and inquisitive eyes. When it reached Oliver, it sniffed his outstretched hand, then nuzzled against it, seeking comfort in the strange human child's presence. This extraordinary scene, a human baby and bear cub, united by innocent curiosity, played out under the watchful eyes of the wounded mother bear. She made no move to separate them, perhaps recognizing that her cub had found a moment of peace in this otherwise terrible day. Back at the edge of the forest, the search party had gathered. Noah led the way, his heart pounding with fear. Behind him followed Carson, the hunter who had first spotted the trapped bear, Martha Wilson, whose knowledge of the forest was unmatched, and Dr. Layla Reynolds, the village veterinarian who had brought her medical bag in case the bear needed immediate attention. Several other villagers joined the search, their faces grim with worry. "The trap is in a clearing about half a mile in," Carson explained, pointing deeper into the woods. "If the little one wandered that far—" He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't need to. Everyone understood the terrible danger Oliver might be in. As they moved through the forest, they heard a sound that made them all freeze. Laughter. A child's laughter echoing through the trees. Noah broke into a run, following the sound, praying it was his son and that he was somehow safe. The search party burst into the clearing and stopped dead in their tracks, unable to believe what they were seeing. There was Oliver, sitting on the ground, playing with a bear cub as if it were a household pet, and mere feet away the mother bear watched them, her legs still trapped in the cruel metal jaws of the trap, chains binding her to the spot. "Nobody move," Dr. Reynolds whispered, her professional demeanor momentarily shattered by the unexpected scene. "Any sudden movements might provoke her." Noah's hand tightened around his rifle, his paternal instinct screaming at him to rush forward and snatch his son from danger. But something held him back. Perhaps the strange calm that permeated the clearing, or the way the mother bear seemed to have accepted Oliver's presence. "I've never seen anything like this," Martha murmured, her aged eyes wide with wonder. "In all my years in these woods." The mother bear suddenly looked up, sensing the humans at the edge of the clearing. A low growl rumbled in her throat, and she shifted her weight, pulling against the chains. The metal links clinked against each other, creating a sound that broke the spell of the moment. Oliver, hearing the noise, turned toward the source. His eyes lit up when he saw his father. "Da-da," he called out happily, waving his small hand. The bear cub, startled by the sudden movement, scurried back to its mother's side. The mother bear's growl grew louder. Her eyes, which had been almost gentle when looking at Oliver, now burned with fear and protective rage as she regarded the armed adults. She tried to stand, causing the trap to dig deeper into her flesh. A pained roar escaped her, echoing through the forest. "She thinks we're going to hurt her cub," Dr. Reynolds said quietly. "And in her condition, she can't protect it properly." Noah took a cautious step forward, lowering his rifle. "Oliver," he called softly, trying to keep his voice steady. "Oliver, stay very still, son." But Oliver, oblivious to the danger, got to his feet and began toddling toward his father. As he moved away from the bears, the mother's agitation increased. She pulled against her chains with renewed desperation, sending fresh blood flowing from her wounds. The cub, confused by the tension, began to whimper. It followed Oliver a few steps, then hesitated, torn between the human child it had befriended and its trapped mother. What happened next would later be described by the villagers as nothing short of miraculous. Oliver stopped, turned around, and looked at the frightened cub. Then, with the simple compassion only a child could show, he walked back to the cub and patted its head gently. "It's okay," he said, one of the few phrases he knew. "It's okay." He then did something that made every adult in the clearing hold their breath. He walked directly to the mother bear, right up to her massive, bloodied paw, and placed his tiny hand on it. The bear went still, her growl fading to silence as she looked down at the human child touching her with such innocent trust. In that moment, something changed in the clearing. The tension that had filled the air dissipated, replaced by a sense of wonder. The mother bear lowered her head, bringing her snout level with Oliver's face. She sniffed him once, then made a soft huffing sound that seemed almost like a sigh. Dr. Reynolds was the first to recover from the shock. "I think," she said slowly, "she's letting us help her." Noah nodded, unable to speak through the lump in his throat. He gestured to the others to start moving forward, very slowly. As they approached, the bear watched them warily but made no aggressive moves. Her focus seemed to alternate between the humans and her cub, which had now moved to press against her side. "I need to get close enough to sedate her," Dr. Reynolds explained, opening her medical bag. Even with the child's incredible connection, she's still a wild animal in pain. It's not safe to remove the trap while she's conscious. Martha stepped forward, her weathered face determined. "Let me try something first," she said. She reached into her pocket and pulled out a handful of dried berries. Blackberries from her own garden, preserved from the summer harvest. She approached slowly, her palm extended with the offering. "My grandmother taught me," she explained quietly. "Bears in these woods have been here as long as we have. There's a respect between us that goes back generations." The mother bear sniffed the air, catching the scent of the dried fruit. Her eyes, dulled by pain, showed a flicker of interest. Martha moved closer, step by cautious step, until she was almost within reach of the bear's jaws. She placed the berries on the ground and backed away slowly. The bear stretched her neck, sniffing at the offering. After a moment's hesitation, she lapped up the berries with her tongue, eating them quickly. As she finished, her eyes met Martha's, and something unspoken passed between the elderly woman and the wounded animal. "Now," Martha said, nodding to Dr. Reynolds. The veterinarian moved forward with her tranquilizer gun. The bear watched her approach, but remained still, as if understanding that these humans meant her no harm. Dr. Reynolds took careful aim and fired the dart into the bear's shoulder. The bear flinched but didn't lash out. "It will take a few minutes to take effect," she explained, stepping back. While they waited, Noah crouched down and opened his arms. "Oliver," he called softly, "come to Daddy now." Oliver looked at his father, then back at the bears. For a moment, it seemed he might refuse to leave his new friends. Then, with a cheerful laugh, he toddled into his father's embrace. Noah clutched him tightly, tears streaming down his face as relief washed over him. "You brave, foolish, wonderful little boy," he whispered into his son's hair. The tranquilizer began to take effect, and the mother bear's eyes grew heavy. She lay down, her massive head resting on her paws, as the sedative pulled her toward unconsciousness. The cub, confused by its mother's sudden lethargy, nudged her with its nose, whimpering softly. "We need to work quickly, Doctor," Reynolds said, kneeling beside the now unconscious bear. "The trap first, then I'll treat the wounds. Someone needs to watch the cub, make sure it doesn't wander off or get aggressive." Carson, who had been silently watching the unfolding events with a mixture of awe and disbelief, stepped forward. "I'll handle the trap," he said, pulling a pair of heavy bolt cutters from his pack. "I've removed these before from other animals." As Carson worked on the trap, Dr. Reynolds prepared her medical supplies. Noah held Oliver safely in his arms, but the child's attention remained fixed on the bears, his expression solemn as if he understood the gravity of the situation despite his young age. Martha approached Noah, her eyes never leaving the bears. "Your boy did something incredible today," she said quietly. "Something I've never seen in all my years. He connected with that bear in a way no adult ever could." Noah nodded, still struggling to process what he had witnessed. "He doesn't know to be afraid," he replied. "He just saw someone hurting and wanted to help." A sharp, metallic snap echoed through the clearing as Carson finally cut through the trap's mechanism. The cruel metal jaws sprang open, releasing their grip on the bear's leg. Fresh blood flowed from the deep wounds, and Dr. Reynolds immediately moved in to clean and dress them. "The damage is severe but not life-threatening," she announced after examining the injuries. "If infection doesn't set in, she should recover her ability to walk normally." As the adults worked to help the unconscious bear, a strange tension began to build in the air. The forest had gone unnaturally quiet. No birdsong, no rustling leaves, just an eerie silence that raised the hair on the back of Noah's neck. He clutched Oliver closer, suddenly uneasy. Carson was the first to notice. He stood up straight, the bloody trap in his hands, and looked around the clearing with narrowed eyes. "Something's not right," he muttered. A twig snapped somewhere beyond the tree line, then another. Footsteps, heavy and deliberate, approaching the clearing from multiple directions. "Get behind me," Noah instructed Martha, passing Oliver to her as he raised his rifle once more. 3 men emerged from the trees. They wore camouflage clothing and carried hunting rifles. Their faces were hard, eyes cold as they surveyed the scene before them. The leader, a tall man with a scar running down one cheek, stepped forward. "Well, well," he drawled, his voice grating like metal on stone. "Looks like someone's messing with our catch." The poachers had returned to check their traps, only to find the villagers freeing their intended prize. The tension in the clearing shifted from wonder to danger as the two groups faced each other. The unconscious bear and her vulnerable cub caught in the middle. The leader's eyes fell on Oliver, who was watching the newcomers with innocent curiosity. A cold smile spread across the poacher's face. "Interesting situation you've got here," he said. "A kid playing with bears. That's not something you see every day." Noah stepped forward, placing himself between the poachers and his son. "This is protected land," he said, his voice steady, despite the fear coursing through him. "You've set illegal traps and endangered a mother bear and her cub, not to mention my son who wandered into your trap area." The scarred man laughed, a harsh sound that cut through the clearing. "Protected land? These woods belong to whoever makes use of them, and bear parts fetch a good price overseas." His eyes hardened. "Now, step aside and let us collect what's ours." Behind Noah, Dr. Reynolds continued working on the bear's wounds, her hands steady despite the dangerous standoff happening just feet away. Martha held Oliver close. Her aged eyes narrowed at the poachers with a lifetime of defiance. Carson stood with the bloody trap still in his hands, his expression grim. The other villagers who had joined the search party moved to form a protective circle around the bears, their faces determined despite their fear. They were simple people, farmers, shopkeepers, teachers, up against armed men who killed for profit. But something stronger than fear drove them now. the memory of a child's compassion that had bridged the gap between human and animal. The standoff stretched, tension filling the clearing as neither side backed down. Then, from the direction of the village, came the sound of voices, many voices, calling out names and moving through the forest. The rest of Pine Hollow's residents were coming, drawn by Sophia's frantic calls for help in finding her missing son. The lead poacher's expression darkened as he realized they were about to be outnumbered. He raised his rifle slightly, the implicit threat clear. "This isn't over," he growled. "Those bears are worth more than you know." Before Noah could respond, a small voice cut through the tension. "No hurt doggy," Oliver said firmly, pointing at the poachers from Martha's arms. His innocent declaration, spoken with such conviction, created a moment of startled silence. Then, from behind the poachers came a new sound, the unmistakable click of a shotgun being cocked. Sophia Bennett stepped into the clearing, her husband's hunting shotgun held steadily in her hands. Her eyes blazed with maternal fury as she took in the scene. Her son in potential danger, armed men threatening her family and neighbors. "You heard my son," she said, her voice deadly calm. "No hurting the dogs." The poachers turned, finding themselves caught between the villagers in the clearing and the new arrivals filtering through the trees behind Sophia. The odds had shifted against them, and they knew it. With a final venomous glare, the scarred leader lowered his rifle. "This territory ain't worth the trouble," he spat. "Keep your mangy bears." As the poachers retreated into the forest, several of the village men followed at a distance to ensure they truly left. Sophia rushed forward, the shotgun now pointed safely at the ground, and embraced Noah and Oliver with desperate relief. "What happened here?" she asked, looking from her family to the unconscious bear being treated by Dr. Reynolds, to the cub that was now cautiously approaching Oliver once more. Noah shook his head, still processing the events himself. "Something miraculous," he answered simply. As twilight descended upon the forest clearing, the villagers worked together with quiet determination. Dr. Reynolds had finished treating the mother bear's wounds, wrapping thick bandages around her injured legs. The tranquilizer would keep her unconscious for another hour, giving them precious time to move her and her cub to a safer location. "We can't just leave them here," Martha insisted, her weathered hands gently stroking the bear cub's head. The small creature had grown surprisingly comfortable with the humans, particularly Oliver, who sat nearby in his mother's protective embrace. "Those poachers will be back once they realize we've gone." Carson nodded grimly. "Martha's right, they won't give up easily, not when bear gallbladders can fetch thousands on the black market." Sophia gasped, clutching Oliver closer. The thought that her son had wandered into such danger made her blood run cold. Yet she couldn't deny the wonder of what had happened. Her baby boy, somehow connecting with these wild creatures in a way that defied explanation. "We can take them to the old Wilson property," Dr. Reynolds suggested, packing away her medical supplies. "The barn there is sturdy enough to hold them temporarily, and it's far enough from the main roads that the poachers won't easily find it." Noah considered this. The abandoned Wilson farm had stood empty for years, ever since old Jim Wilson had passed away with no heirs to claim the property. The barn remained solid, though, and the surrounding area was secluded enough to provide safety. It could work, he agreed. But how do we move a sedated bear through half a mile of forest? The answer came in the form of Elijah Parker, the village carpenter, who had joined the search party. His weathered face broke into a determined smile as he unfolded a large canvas tarp he'd brought along. "We make a stretcher," he explained. 8 of us, 4 on each side, should be able to carry her. As the men constructed a makeshift stretcher, Sophia approached Dr. Reynolds. "Will she be okay?" she asked, nodding toward the unconscious bear. "Those wounds looked terrible." The veterinarian sighed, removing her blood-stained gloves. "The physical wounds will heal with time, assuming infection doesn't set in. But she's been traumatized. Wild animals don't easily recover from experiences like this." She glanced at the cub, which was now playing with the hem of Martha's coat. "And the little one needs its mother healthy and strong." While the adults prepared to move the bears, Oliver watched everything with wide, solemn eyes. He seemed unusually quiet, as if sensing the gravity of the situation. Occasionally, he would point to the bears and say, "Doggy hurt," his simple words conveying a depth of understanding that belied his young age. "Yes, sweetheart," Sophia would reply, kissing his forehead. "But we're going to help them get better." The stretcher completed, the strongest men of the village carefully positioned themselves around the unconscious bear. With coordinated effort, they lifted the massive animal onto the canvas. The bear's weight was substantial, but distributed among 8 men, it became manageable. "Ready," Noah called from his position at the front corner. "Lift on 3, 1, 2, 3. With a collective grunt, the men raised the stretcher. The bear shifted slightly but remained unconscious. Slowly, carefully, they began the journey through the darkening forest, following a path that Carson cleared ahead of them. Martha carried the bear cub, which had grown sleepy as the day's excitement took its toll. Sophia followed close behind, Oliver in her arms. The child's eyes never left the bear's, his tiny face etched with concern that seemed far too mature for his 15 months of life. The procession moved slowly through the forest, the stretcher-bearers stopping occasionally to rest their burning arms before continuing. The sun had fully set by the time they reached the old Wilson barn, and lanterns had to be lit to guide their way. The barn doors creaked open to reveal a spacious interior, dusty from disuse but structurally sound. Fresh hay was spread in one corner, creating a soft bed where the stretcher-bearers gently laid the mother bear. The cub was placed beside her, and it immediately curled up against its mother's warm fur, eyes blinking sleepily. Dr. Reynolds checked the bear's vital signs once more. "Her breathing is steady," she announced. "The sedative should wear off in about an hour. We should be gone before then. A disoriented bear in an unfamiliar place could be dangerous." The villagers began filtering out of the barn, their extraordinary mission accomplished. They spoke in hushed tones about what they had witnessed that day. A child's innocent compassion breaking through the boundaries that separated human from beast. Before leaving, Noah knelt beside the bears one last time. Oliver, still in Sophia's arms, reached out toward the sleeping animals. "Say goodbye for now, Oliver," Noah said softly. "They need to rest and heal." To everyone's surprise, the bear cub rose from its position by its mother and padded over to where Oliver's hand extended. It sniffed his fingers, then gently licked them, causing the child to giggle with delight. "Bye-bye, doggy," Oliver said, waving his wet fingers. As the last of the villagers left the barn, Martha paused at the doorway. Her aged eyes took in the scene, mother and cub, resting safely because of human intervention sparked by a child's compassion. "My grandmother used to say that children see the world as it should be, not as it is," she murmured. "Today, I think we all got a glimpse of that world." The barn doors were secured with a simple latch, not to keep the bears in, but to keep intruders out until the mother was strong enough to lead her cub back to the wilderness where they belonged. That night, as stars emerged in the velvet sky above Pine Hollow, a meeting was held in the village hall. Nearly every resident attended, eager to hear the full story of the day's events. Noah recounted what had happened, with others filling in details from their perspectives. The tale seemed almost unbelievable, a toddler wandering into the forest, befriending a bear cub, somehow calming its injured mother, and ultimately bringing the village together to save the animals from poachers. Those men will be back, Carson warned, his hunter's instincts telling him the threat wasn't over. Bears are valuable to their kind. They won't give up easily. Sheriff Dawson, who had been away in the neighboring town when the events unfolded, nodded grimly. I've put in calls to the state wildlife authorities and the federal rangers. They're sending people, but it won't be until morning at the earliest. Then we stand guard tonight, Noah declared, rising to his feet. In shifts, 4 men at a time, watching the barn and the approaches to it. Volunteers stepped forward immediately. Farmers, shopkeepers, teachers, all willing to protect the injured bear and her cub. A schedule was drawn up. Weapons were checked, and communications arranged. Pine Hollow, a village that had always lived in harmony with the surrounding wilderness, prepared to defend that harmony against those who would destroy it for profit. As the meeting disbanded, Dr. Reynolds approached the Bennett family. "Your son did something remarkable today," she said, her professional demeanor softening as she looked at Oliver, now sleeping peacefully in Sophia's arms. "I've worked with wild animals all my life, and I've never seen anything like it." "He's always had a way with animals," Sophia replied, stroking her son's hair. "Even the strays that sometimes wander through the village. They always seem to find him." "It's more than that," the veterinarian insisted. "That mother bear was in pain, terrified, protecting her cub, all instincts that should have made her lash out at any human approaching her. Yet she let your son touch her. It's as if he could communicate with her somehow, on a level we've lost the ability to understand." Noah wrapped an arm around his wife's shoulders, his expression thoughtful. "Maybe that's what innocence really is," he suggested. "Not just the absence of knowledge about danger, but the presence of something purer, something that sees beyond differences to what connects us all." As the Bennetts walked home through the quiet village, stars twinkling overhead, they were unaware that Oliver's extraordinary connection with the bears was just the beginning of a story that would transform their lives and their community in ways they could never have imagined. Back at the Wilson barn, the mother bear stirred as the sedative began to wear off. Her eyes opened slowly, adjusting to the unfamiliar surroundings. Instead of panic, however, there was a strange calm in her gaze. Her injured legs throbbed with pain, but the worst of it had been eased by Dr. Reynolds' treatment. Beside her, her cub slept peacefully, its small chest rising and falling with each breath. The bear's sensitive nose caught the lingering scent of humans, many humans, but mixed with those scents was one that stood out. The gentle, milk-sweet smell of the human cub that had approached her without fear in the forest. Something about that scent brought comfort rather than alarm, as if it carried memories of compassion that transcended the usual boundaries between their kinds. Outside the barn, the first shift of village guards took their positions. Among them was Carson, the hunter who had first discovered the trapped bear. He sat on an old stump, rifle across his knees, staring into the darkness beyond the barn's weathered walls. His thoughts kept returning to the image of Oliver's tiny hand resting on the bear's paw. A child's gesture that had changed everything. Miles away, in a crude camp hidden deep in the forest, the scarred poacher leader paced angrily before a campfire. His 2 companions watched warily, knowing his temper was dangerous when provoked. "We're not leaving without those bears," he snarled, kicking a burning log and sending sparks flying into the night. "Do you know what the gallbladder from a bear that size would fetch in certain markets? And the cub, alive, it's worth even more to the right buyer." The younger of his companions, a thin man with nervous eyes, spoke hesitantly. But the whole village is involved now, Silas. They'll be watching. And there was talk of calling in the rangers. Silas stopped pacing, his scarred face twisted into a cruel smile. Then we don't give them time to organize. We go back tonight, find where they've taken our prize, and claim what's ours. His hand moved to the hunting knife at his belt, the blade gleaming in the firelight. And if anyone gets in our way, well, accidents happen in the dark. The third man, older and more experienced, nodded slowly. I tracked them after they left the clearing. They took the bears to an old barn about 2 miles north of the village. Silas's smile widened. Perfect. We move at midnight, when most of those villagers will be asleep in their beds, dreaming their simple dreams. He checked his rifle, eyes gleaming with anticipation. By dawn, we'll be gone, and those bears will be nothing but a memory for that village to weep over. What the poachers didn't realize was that Pine Hollow was no ordinary village, and this night would prove to be unlike any other in its long history. The connection formed between a human child and a wounded bear had awakened something in the forest, something old and powerful that had slumbered for generations, something that would not allow such cruelty to go unchallenged. Back at the Bennett cabin, Sophia tucked Oliver into his small bed. The child's eyes were already closing, exhausted from the day's extraordinary events. She sang softly, an old lullaby her grandmother had taught her, about the creatures of the forest and their secret lives beneath the moon. As Oliver drifted into sleep, his tiny fingers curled around his favorite stuffed animal, a worn teddy bear that seemed especially poignant tonight. Noah stood in the doorway, watching his wife and son with a mixture of love and lingering fear. The memory of Oliver in the clearing, inches away from the injured bear's massive jaws, still made his heart race. It could have ended so differently, so tragically. Yet instead they had witnessed something that defied explanation, something that felt almost sacred. "He's finally asleep," Sophia whispered, carefully rising from the edge of the bed. She joined Noah in the doorway, leaning against him as they both watched their son's peaceful slumber. "I keep thinking about what Dr. Reynolds said," Noah murmured, "about Oliver communicating with the bear on some level we can't understand." Sophia nodded, remembering her own grandmother's stories. "My grandma used to talk about people who had the old way with animals. She said before modern times, some children were born with the ability to bridge the gap between humans and the wild creatures. The village would recognize these children early and train them to become healers and mediators between the human world and the natural one." Noah raised an eyebrow. "You think Oliver has, some kind of ancient gift?" "I don't know," Sophia admitted, "but I can't explain what happened today any other way. That bear should have killed him, Noah. Instead, she let him touch her, comfort her. Their eyes met, and it was like they recognized each other somehow." The couple moved to the kitchen, where Noah poured 2 cups of strong coffee. They would both be taking shifts at the barn tonight, along with the other villagers. Sophia would go first, while Noah stayed with Oliver. Then they would switch at midnight. "There's something else," Noah said, after a long pause. "Something Martha mentioned at the barn. She said there's a legend in these parts about a child who could speak to bears. It happened generations ago, supposedly. A young boy wandered into the forest during a harsh winter when food was scarce. He came upon a mother bear and her cubs starving in their den. Instead of running away, the boy shared his food with them. The next day, he brought more." Sophia listened intently, her coffee forgotten in her hands. "According to Martha, the boy visited the bears every day that winter, keeping them alive when they would have otherwise starved. When spring came, the bears followed the boy back to the village instead of returning to the wild. The villagers were terrified, but the bears showed no aggression. They simply wanted to be near the boy who had saved them. "What happened to them?" Sophia asked. Noah shrugged. "Martha didn't say. It's just a legend, after all. But the way she looked at Oliver when she told me, it was like she was seeing the past come alive again." Their conversation was interrupted by a soft knock at the door. Noah answered it to find Martha herself standing on their porch, an ancient-looking leather-bound book clutched in her gnarled hands. "I hope I'm not disturbing you," she said, her eyes moving past Noah to find Sophia. "But there's something you both need to see." They invited her in, and Martha set the book on the kitchen table. The leather cover was cracked with age, the pages yellowed and brittle. "This belonged to my great-grandmother," she explained, carefully opening it. "She was the record keeper for Pine Hollow in her day. She wrote down the histories and legends that had been passed down through generations to preserve them for those who would come after." Martha turned the pages delicately until she found what she was looking for. "Here," she said, pointing to a faded ink drawing that depicted a small child standing beside what appeared to be a bear. "This is the story of Thomas Wilson, who lived in Pine Hollow in 1879. He was 4 years old when he wandered into the forest and befriended a family of bears during the worst winter anyone could remember." Noah and Sophia exchanged glances. "Wilson?" Noah asked. "As in the Wilson property where we took the bears today?" Martha nodded, a smile crinkling the corners of her eyes. "The very same. The Wilson family has deep roots in this valley, going back to the first settlers. Thomas Wilson was the youngest son of the original homesteader. His connection with the bears became something of a legend in these parts." She turned another page, revealing more faded drawings and handwritten notes. "According to my great-grandmother's records, Thomas had what the native people of this region called the bear touch, a rare gift that allowed certain individuals to communicate with bears in a way that transcended normal human-animal boundaries." Sophia leaned closer, studying the detailed drawings of a small boy feeding bears from his hand. "And you think Oliver has this bear touch?" "I've lived in these woods for 73 years, Martha replied gravely. "I've seen bears many times, from a respectful distance. Never, not once, have I seen a bear, especially a mother with a cub, react to a human the way that bear reacted to your son today. It goes against every natural instinct they have." She closed the book carefully. "Yes, I believe Oliver has the bear touch. And I believe it's no coincidence that we took those bears to the Wilson property today. Some things are meant to be." Noah ran a hand through his hair, struggling to process this new information. "Even if this is true, this bear touch, what does it mean for Oliver? For us?" Martha's expression grew solemn. "According to the old stories, children with the bear touch were considered blessed, but their gift came with responsibility. They became guardians of the forest in a way, mediators between the human world and the wild. Thomas Wilson grew up to establish the first wildlife sanctuary in this region, long before such things were common." She looked toward Oliver's bedroom, where the child slept peacefully, unaware of the legacy he might have inherited. "But that's a concern for the future. Tonight, we have more immediate worries. Those poachers won't give up easily, especially not Silas Blackwood." "You know the man?" Sophia asked, surprised. "Blackwood has been raiding these forests for years," Martha confirmed. "He's wanted in 3 states for poaching endangered species. The scar on his face came from a run-in with a park ranger 5 years ago, a confrontation that left the ranger hospitalized for months. He's dangerous, ruthless, and worst of all, patient. He'll wait for his opportunity." Noah's jaw tightened. "Then we'll be ready for him. I should head to the barn soon for my shift. Actually, Martha said, rising from her chair, I came to tell you there's been a change of plans. Sheriff Dawson received word that the wildlife authorities can't make it until the day after tomorrow. A storm in the mountains has closed the roads, and there's been a sighting of Blackwood and his men moving through the forest about a mile from the Wilson property. Sophia gasped. They're coming tonight. Martha nodded grimly. Carson spotted them from his hunting blind. They're circling the property, looking for the best approach. The sheriff is gathering everyone at the town hall to organize a proper defense. Noah was already moving, grabbing his coat and checking his rifle. Sophia, you stay here with Oliver. Lock the doors and windows. If you hear anything suspicious— No, Sophia interrupted firmly. I'm coming too. Mrs. Abernathy can stay with Oliver. She's just across the road, and she's watched him many times before. Sophia, it could be dangerous. And I can handle a shotgun better than most men in this village, she reminded him. You know that. Besides, we're stronger together, Noah. We always have been. After a moment's hesitation, Noah nodded. While Sophia called Mrs. Abernathy, Noah checked on Oliver one last time. The boy slept soundly, his chest rising and falling with each peaceful breath. The stuffed bear clutched tightly in his small arms. Looking at his son's innocent face, Noah felt a fierce protectiveness surge through him. Whatever this bear touch meant, whatever challenges lay ahead, he would ensure Oliver had the chance to discover his gift safely. Within minutes, Mrs. Abernathy arrived. A kindly widow in her 60s who doted on Oliver as if he were her own grandchild. After giving her instructions and making sure she had their emergency contact numbers, Noah, Sophia, and Martha set out for the town hall. The night air was crisp and cool, stars scattered across the sky like distant campfires. As they walked briskly through the sleeping village, Noah noticed something unusual. Animals were unusually active tonight. A fox crossed their path, pausing to watch them before disappearing between houses. Owls hooted from every direction, their calls overlapping in an eerie chorus. And once, just once, Noah could have sworn he heard a distant bear's roar echoing from the forest's edge. The town hall was ablaze with light when they arrived, its parking lot filled with trucks and cars. Inside, nearly every adult resident of Pine Hollow had gathered. Sheriff Dawson stood at the front of the room. A large map of the surrounding forest spread on a table before him. Carson, the hunter, was pointing to various locations, explaining what he had seen. They're approaching from the north and east, he was saying as Noah, Sophia, and Martha entered. 3 men, well armed. They're moving carefully, using the creek bed for cover when possible. The sheriff nodded grimly. Based on their current position and rate of movement, they'll reach the Wilson barn around midnight. We need to be in position well before then. He outlined his plan. The villagers would split into 4 groups, covering all approaches to the barn. They would remain hidden, allowing the poachers to enter the barn, then cut off their escape routes. The goal was to capture the men for arrest and prosecution, avoiding violence if possible. But make no mistake, Sheriff Dawson concluded, his weathered face serious. These men are dangerous. They've killed before. Animals certainly, possibly humans too. If it comes down to your safety or theirs, you protect yourselves and each other. Understood? There was a chorus of agreement from the assembled villagers. Noah felt a swell of pride for his community. Ordinary people willing to risk their safety to protect wildlife and the principles they believed in. As the meeting broke up and people began organizing into their assigned groups, Dr. Reynolds approached the Bennetts. I've been thinking about the bears, she said. The mother's injuries, while not life-threatening, have weakened her. In her current state, if the poachers manage to get to her. They won't, Noah assured her. But if they did, the veterinarian persisted, she might not be able to defend herself or her cub effectively. I've prepared additional sedatives and medical supplies, just in case we need to move them quickly or treat any new injuries. Sophia touched the doctor's arm gratefully. Thank you for everything you've done for them today. Dr. Reynolds smiled. I became a veterinarian to help animals. I never expected to be part of something like this, though. A village mobilizing to protect a bear and her cub because a child showed us the way. She shook her head in wonder. Speaking of which, how is Oliver? Sleeping peacefully, Sophia replied. Mrs. Abernathy is with him. He doesn't seem traumatized by today's events at all, which is a blessing. Children are remarkably resilient, Dr. Reynolds agreed. But keep an eye on him in the coming days. Sometimes reactions to stress can be delayed. As they continued their conversation, Martha returned from speaking with Sheriff Dawson. We're in Group 3, she informed them. Covering the eastern approach to the barn, we should leave now to get in position. Outside, the village hummed with quiet, purposeful activity. Groups of people checked equipment, synchronized watches, and spoke in hushed tones about the night ahead. There was tension in the air, certainly, but also a sense of unity and resolve that Noah found deeply moving. Group 3 consisted of Noah, Sophia, Martha, Dr. Reynolds, and 3 other villagers. Jackson Chen, who owned the local hardware store, Elijah Parker, the carpenter, and Rebecca Winters, a former Army medic who now ran the village post office. They gathered their equipment: flashlights, first aid supplies, communications devices, and, reluctantly but necessarily, weapons, and set out for the Wilson property. The forest at night was a different world from the daytime one. Shadows stretched and shifted with each movement of the branches overhead. Nocturnal creatures watched their passage with glowing eyes. Every snapping twig or rustling leaf seemed magnified in the darkness. Noah led the way, his hunter's instincts on high alert, while Sophia brought up the rear, ensuring no one fell behind. As they neared the Wilson property, Martha signaled for them to stop. She pointed silently to a distinctive tree, an ancient oak with a trunk split down the middle, creating a natural arch. We're close to the boundary now, she whispered. From here, we need to move with absolute silence. They continued with greater caution, placing each foot carefully to avoid making noise. The barn soon came into view, a dark silhouette against the starlit sky. No lights showed from within, but Noah could make out the forms of other villagers taking up positions around the perimeter. Group 3 spread out along the eastern approach, concealing themselves behind trees, bushes, and the remains of an old stone wall. Noah found a spot that gave him a clear view of both the barn and the forest beyond. Sophia positioned herself nearby, close enough to communicate if necessary. For nearly an hour they waited in tense silence. The forest around them teemed with nightlife. Insects chirping, small animals foraging, bats swooping overhead. Then, gradually, those sounds began to diminish, as if the creatures sensed an approaching danger. Noah reached for his radio, switching it to the agreed-upon channel. Group 3 to base, he whispered. Eastern approach is quiet, but wildlife activity has dropped suddenly. Possible sign of human intrusion. Sheriff Dawson's voice crackled back. Copy that, Group 3. Group 1 reports similar observations on the northern approach. Stay alert. Remember, we wait until they're inside the barn before making our move. Minutes passed with agonizing slowness. Noah's muscles grew stiff from holding the same position, but he didn't dare move. Beside him, Sophia remained perfectly still, her eyes scanning the darkness with focused intensity. Then, suddenly, she touched his arm and pointed. 3 shadows moved through the trees, approaching the barn from the northeast, exactly as Carson had predicted. They moved with practiced stealth, freezing at intervals to survey their surroundings before continuing. Noah raised his radio again. Group 3 to all groups. Visual confirmation of 3 subjects approaching from northeast, approximately 50 yards from the barn and closing. Copy that, came the sheriff's reply. All groups hold position. Let them enter the barn. The poachers reached the edge of the clearing surrounding the barn. The leader, Silas Blackwood, identifiable by his distinctive silhouette, signaled his companions to spread out. They circled the barn once, checking for guards or traps, then gathered at the main doors. Noah's heart pounded in his chest as he watched Blackwood test the latch. Finding it unlocked, as the sheriff had deliberately left it, the poacher eased the door open just enough for the 3 men to slip inside. "They're in," Noah reported via radio. "All 3 subjects have entered the barn." "All groups move in," Sheriff Dawson ordered. "Secure all exits, remember. We want them alive if possible." Noah and Sophia emerged from their hiding places, moving swiftly toward the barn alongside the rest of Group 3. Other groups appeared from different directions, converging on the structure. They had nearly reached their positions when a piercing roar echoed from within the barn, followed by shouts and a gunshot. "Move in now," the sheriff commanded over the radio. "Emergency protocol." Noah sprinted the remaining distance to the barn, Sophia close behind. They reached the main doors just as Sheriff Dawson and 2 deputies arrived from the opposite side. The sheriff nodded once, then threw the doors open wide, flooding the interior with light from powerful flashlights. The scene inside the barn was chaos. The mother bear was fully awake and on her feet despite her injuries, her massive body positioned protectively in front of her cub. Silas Blackwood stood 10 feet away, his rifle aimed at the bear, blood streaming from a gash on his arm. One of his companions lay unconscious on the floor, while the 3rd man was backed against the wall, a tranquilizer gun trembling in his hands. "Police, drop your weapons," Sheriff Dawson commanded, his own gun trained on Blackwood. The poacher's eyes darted from the bear to the sheriff, calculating his odds. For a moment, it seemed he might surrender. Then, with lightning speed, he swung his rifle toward the lawman. "No!" Sophia shouted, raising her shotgun. But before either Blackwood or the sheriff could fire, the mother bear charged. Despite her injured legs, she moved with astonishing power, crossing the space between them in seconds. Blackwood managed to fire once, the bullet grazing the bear's shoulder, before she was upon him, her massive paws knocking him to the ground. The sheriff and deputies rushed forward, while Dr. Reynolds prepared a tranquilizer dart. The bear stood over Blackwood, who lay frozen in terror, her jaws inches from his face. A deep growl rumbled from her throat. Not the sound of a predator about to kill, but a warning, clear and deliberate. Then, to everyone's astonishment, she backed away, returning to her cub, which had remained huddled in the corner throughout the confrontation. She positioned herself between the humans and her offspring once more, her eyes wary but somehow knowing. "I've never seen anything like it," Sheriff Dawson muttered as his deputies handcuffed the stunned poachers. "She could have killed him easily, but she just warned him." Dr. Reynolds approached the bear cautiously, tranquilizer gun ready but not raised. "It's as if she knew we were trying to help her," she said in wonder, as if she understood the difference between us and them. The 3rd poacher, the one who had been backed against the wall, dropped his weapon and raised his hands. "I surrender," he said, voice shaking. "Just keep that monster away from me." As the deputies led the poachers outside to waiting vehicles, Noah noticed something unusual about the bear cub. It seemed agitated, pacing and whining, its attention fixed not on its mother or the humans in the barn, but on something outside. "What's wrong with the cub?" he asked Dr. Reynolds. Before she could answer, the cub darted forward, slipping past the veterinarian and heading straight for the open barn doors. Its mother roared and followed, moving with remarkable speed despite her injuries. "Let them go," Dr. Reynolds called as some villagers moved to block the bear's path. "Something's got them spooked." The bears burst from the barn into the night, the mother following her cub, as it headed not toward the deep forest as expected, but in the direction of Pine Hollow Village. Noah felt a chill run down his spine as realization dawned. "Oliver," he whispered, then louder, "Oliver, they're heading toward our house." Without waiting for the others, Noah and Sophia raced toward their truck, parked at the edge of the property. Throwing it into gear, Noah sped down the dirt road toward the village, his mind filled with terrifying possibilities. Why would the bears head toward their house? What connection had formed between Oliver and these wild creatures? They reached the village in minutes, other vehicles close behind. As they turned onto their street, a shocking sight greeted them. The mother bear and her cub stood in their front yard, the cub pawing at the front door while its mother paced anxiously nearby. Mrs. Abernathy's face appeared briefly in the window, then vanished as she presumably went to check on Oliver. Noah pulled the truck to a stop and jumped out, Sophia right behind him. Sheriff Dawson's cruiser arrived seconds later, its headlights illuminating the surreal scene. "What on earth?" the sheriff muttered, drawing his weapon cautiously. "Wait," Noah said, placing a hand on the sheriff's arm. "Something's not right. They're not acting aggressive. It's almost like they're trying to alert us to something." As if to confirm his words, the bear cub whined loudly, scratching at the door with increased urgency. Sophia moved forward slowly, guided by an instinct she couldn't explain. "I think we should go inside," she said. "I think they're trying to tell us something about Oliver." The mother bear turned to look at her, their eyes meeting in a moment of strange understanding. Then the massive animal backed away from the door, as if inviting them to enter. Sheriff Dawson shook his head in disbelief. "I've lived in these mountains my whole life, and I've never seen bears behave like this. It's like they're communicating." Noah and Sophia approached their house cautiously, the bears watching their every move. When they reached the door, Noah called out, "Mrs. Abernathy, it's us. We're coming in." He opened the door slowly, surprised to find it unlocked. The house was eerily quiet. No sign of Mrs. Abernathy in the living room or kitchen. "Mrs. Abernathy," Sophia called, moving toward Oliver's bedroom with increasing urgency. Noah followed, a sense of dread building in his chest. The door to Oliver's room stood half open, moonlight streaming through the window, illuminating the small bed. It was empty. "Oliver!" Sophia gasped, rushing to the bed and throwing back the covers, as if her son might somehow be hidden beneath them. "Oliver, where are you?" Mrs. Abernathy appeared in the doorway, a bruise forming on her forehead and blood matting her gray hair. "I'm so sorry," she said, her voice trembling. "They came out of nowhere, 2 men. They hit me before I could even scream. They took him, Sophia. They took Oliver."